I'm Michael Sullivan from Internet 2, and I'm happy to be welcoming my friends and colleagues from ICT BioMed, which is a consortium of HPC centers from around the world. We have two of the ICT BioMed leaders here on stage with me, and then two more who are in India. And actually, our first presentation today will be from Rajendra Joshi and his colleague, Amit Saxena, located at CDAC in Pune, India. I'd like to go ahead and connect with India at this point. And Rajendra, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
So I think we would like to proceed, and if you prompt me, I will advance the slides.
Okay. So my name is Rajendra Joshi. I head the bioinformatics group at CDAC in Pune, back in India. I'll be kind of introducing to you the ICT BioMed consortium and giving you a slight background about why we need to do global science using global infrastructure. Next slide. So this slide talks to you about something which I call as digital biology, which is nothing but a data-driven life sciences. Today, if you see in life sciences, you have almost everything which is high throughput, right from DNA sequencing to gene expression analysis to high throughput mass spectroscopy, trying to understand protein-protein interactions. So there's a lot of automation and robotics which is being introduced into life sciences, and we will soon land up with many of the labs which routinely produce petabytes of sequence data. This is going to be very tough to manage over the next decade or so. Next slide. So this slide talks to you about biology is becoming more of a computer science. If you look at the plot that is seen on the screen on top, you have on the y-axis the computing complexity, you have on the x-axis the biological complexity. You have a range of problems, right from comparative genomics to rigid docking, to genome-scale protein threading, to molecular dynamics studies, to protein-machine interactions, to molecule-based cell simulations, etc. So all these problems which are there are of petascale and exascale nature. So one needs to really be equipped with enormous amount of computing power to really tackle these problems in life sciences. Next slide. So this talks about how extreme computing, or something which is much beyond exascale computing, is required in life sciences. So basically, extreme computing is nothing but very large supercomputing facilities which need to be dedicated for bioinformatics research. We need to look at new system architectures. We need to look at very large memory for next generation sequencing applications. We need to look at accelerators like GPUs and MIC and FPGAs. We need to look at specially designed hardware like ASICs or high-speed system area networks, special purpose machines which are kind of the new kid on the block, and specifically machines which are designed to handle big data analytics in biology, because I believe that the future of biology is going to be completely flooded with data, and it is going to be data which is driving the future hypothesis. Next slide. So obviously, as I said in the last couple of slides, the infrastructure requirements for this kind of data-enabled life sciences is enormous. And that's where we really need consortiums like ICT BioMed. ICT BioMed is a consortium of leading scientists all over the world, from the US, from Sweden, from Poland, from India, etc. We have people who not only believe in technology, but we have also application users who can really design problems which really require enormous amount of computing, enormous amount of network bandwidth which is there. So the basic focus areas of the consortium are knowledge integration, semantic web services, complex big data analytics, visualization, next generation sequencing, and analytics. Next slide. So the ICT BioMed believes in collaborative research. We believe in tackling large problems which require enormous amount of computing infrastructure, network infrastructure, etc. We also are looking into data sharing policies, governing the entire the model, selecting and deploying infrastructure to deal with large genomics data sets and the need of high throughput, resolving issues around data architectures, formats, semantics, integration, interoperability, leveraging advanced networking and cloud computing as well. Next slide. So what you see on the next slide is basically the key players in this entire ICT BioMed consortium, where the researchers are kind of positioned at Chalmers, PSNC, Notre Dame, and CDAC. And we have different kind of expertise available at all these centers. And essentially, any researcher in biology who would like to tackle a large problem in life sciences, we do have the expertise which we can kind of tackle the problem across these geographical locations. Next slide. So the next slide basically shows you the efforts that the consortium is taking to build something which we call as the global biomedical cloud. And the global cloud is basically for global research. Any kind of problems that life sciences researchers require to be solved over the kind of cloud, we are very happy to take part into those kind of projects and deliver something which we call as cutting edge biology. Next slide. So I'd like to conclude here my brief talk here, which I call as something which is biology has become a data-driven science. I would say, in fact, a big data-driven science. The future is really very bright, where we need to establish global science hubs, large data stations to handle petabytes and exabytes or even probably yottabytes of data, gigantic analytical engines required to process this data, and fat pipes connecting the global science hubs, because we need extremely high bandwidth to really push data across the continent to really do some kind of analysis. And this is where we come into an era of digital biology. Thank you.
So thank you, Rajendra. Our next presenter is also in India at this time. It's Dr. Amit Dut, who has a history of working here in the US at the Broad Institute, among other places. And he currently leads a lab at the ATREC facility, which is part of the Tata Memorial Hospital near Mumbai. I believe the institute's actually in Navi Mumbai. Are you there, Amit? I'm not sure that we actually have a connection established. Amit, can you hear me?
Mike, Dr. Amit Dutt just called and he told that he is having some connectivity problems. So can you call him on this number?
So I think what we'll do is we'll move to our next speaker while we try and establish the connection with Dr. Dut. So in order to do that, we're going to have to skip ahead to a little bit later slide, the one that refers to Cezary Mazurek. Cezary is a good friend and colleague from Poznan, Poland, and works at the PSNC facility there. And Cezary, could you come and talk to us about how we're all working together?
Thank you, Mike. It's a pity that we had to skip a very important part of research-driven part of ICT BioMed focus. But then I will try to comment on this while presenting slides on Federated Cloud's experiment or pilot which we perform in ICT BioMed consortium. Can I have this slide? Yes. So ICT BioMed, as we look at it from the cloud perspective, can bring to the scientists, especially in the healthcare sector, future data infrastructure for trading and developing better services for the healthcare, starting from research on data, but also providing new communication facilities for doctors or new teleconsultation services to patients and to medical sector. Because we started in the global approach, with the global approach within with the operators of research infrastructure, we have to focus, our main point is to focus on the orchestration of the services, accelerating research developments in biomedical fields. And in terms of infrastructure, we think about the components like large storage, efficient software, high-performance computing, and all the parts of the infrastructure which are coming from that. So our challenge is that the deployment, that is that we want to deploy a model for complex open architecture, cloud-based research facilities, which have the numerous software components with high quality assured for them, and working in an international distributed environment with a diverse user base. When we look at the core components of ICT BioMed Platform, how we started to develop it a couple of years ago, we have several layers of different infrastructure components, starting from the global networking connectivity. Then we have the hardware and software infrastructure, including high-performance computing. Then we have the data infrastructure, especially biomedical data component. Then we have the security layer, which is corresponding to traceability for accessing the data, as well as secure access to particular applications and data components. And finally, the user access layer, which are now here on the next presentation presented by Sandra in terms of science gateways. And what is our approach for building the components and collaboration between the IT specialists, or especially the infrastructure operators and biomedical researchers, is to gather the use cases from them and orchestrate services for particular problems, which are represented here on the picture by these vertical circles. So in terms of cloud layer, because we started with the cloud pilot presented on the last year, we have to consider several cloud providers, several cloud services, as you can imagine, or as you can also, as you are aware of, with a separate level of also the range of activities. So starting from Net Plus, Cloud Prod, but also with we focus on the future internet fireware clouds, which are domain in Europe. And despite of the operators and cloud infrastructure providers, we want to also focus not only on the cloud computing part, but similar like it was provided by the cloud computing priorities published by European Commission. We think that very important part of that integration and interoperability is the software engineering knowledge gathered, or competence gathered together with the providers of the services, as well as open source approach. We have also in mind that we have to focus on the standards and interoperability, like IEEE 2302 standard when we apply to participate on other approaches like standard TOSCA for interoperability, which is driven by industry. So we've had a federated cloud pilot deployed, and it is the OpenStack-based pilot when we unified the interfaces for managing the cloud resources distributed in different centers like we have in ICT BioMed. We assumed the common cloud architecture among all the peers, which enabled us to, for instance, to migrate virtual machines between the clouds, to test multi-zone cloud infrastructure and resource sharing, as well as to replicate and sharing the data sets. For that pilot, we applied the scientific use cases for shared cloud projects, and one of them we will reference also in the next presentation. What is our approach for federated cloud infrastructure is that we have a common cloud middleware software installed on all the locations, and the deployment of OpenStack will be entered by the site-specific gateways. What is natural is, of course, that we will have the common authentication, authorization mechanism for accessing the cloud, and we will fire up with the various components of OpenStack exploited via APIs. And one of the examples which I would like to finish my short talk is a sandbox concept which we developed and now deploy over the infrastructure of ICT BioMed Platform. It is for bringing together the researchers from biomedical domain and IT researchers, ICT researchers, mainly providers of infrastructure components. And basing on the competence matrix which we developed in the ICT BioMed, we are supporting cancer researchers and biomedical researchers with particular proof of concept projects when we select and orchestrate the resources within the platform. Thank you very much, and I will give the voice to Sandra, or back to India, I don't know. So,
there you go. Thanks, Azari. I think we're probably still working on the connection to Dr. Dutt. So at this point, I'm going to ask Sandra Gessing from University of Notre Dame to talk about science gateways, her specialty. Sandra?
Yes. Thank you very much, Mike. So yeah, I'm talking about the science gateways we are planning in ICT BioMed to enhance the usability for the researchers. So why science gateways? So we heard from the speakers before that in bioinformatics, biomedical applications, the users want to model and analyze data on a large scale with distributed computing infrastructures. And the usability of the computational tools and applications and the DCIs is limited. The DCIs are very complex from the user point of view, maybe not only from the user point of view, but also from the computer scientist point of view. And the computational tools often reflect the sophisticated and complex theory behind the tools. And we have to consider that scientists are generally not IT specialists. So there's a need for intuitive and self-explanatory GUIs so that we don't have a sad scientist anymore, but a happy one when we create a solution with science gateways. So science gateways are characterized by convenient access to data and tools. They offer a single point of entry for multiple organizations. So ICT BioMed is a worldwide consortium, and it still should be one single point of entry. The users don't have to deal with firewall issues. And there are diverse frameworks and APIs we can use to create science gateways. The biomedical community widely uses the science gateway framework Galaxy. I give a brief introduction to Galaxy. So Galaxy is a toolbox. If you have a look at the screenshot, this is our instance at ACTRAC in India, the Galaxy instance in India. And you have on the left-hand side, you have a toolbox with different applications, tools the user can choose from. In the middle, he can create workflows. And on the right-hand side, he has a history where he can upload data and he can show, at the moment there's only one data set I've shown there, but you can have also results of jobs there. So the Science Gateway example we are creating at the moment is one instance for the users in Notre Dame with Galaxy. And in Galaxy, we want to integrate data from clinics and hospitals and workflows from Chalmers for research are running on this Galaxy instance. And we want to integrate public databases. And the jobs and workflows are then executed in CDAC, PSNC, and also in Notre Dame. So this is, for example, a use case I got from a colleague in Chalmers. So of course, she has a view on it, not from the technical point of view, but what she really wants to achieve. So she's working on cancer tissue reads and normal tissue reads to compare them. And she wants the sequence data, first of all, she wants to do a quality check. Then she wants to map the sequences and discover the variant identification and evaluation. And after the variant effect analysis, she tries to do a pathway analysis. And at the end of this workflow or pipeline, she wants to know more about cancer and the disease itself, of course. And we have mapped this to a Galaxy workflow. And of course, we have to choose on the tool she can use and that she can directly put her input data set into the workflow and can start it with one press on a button so that she doesn't have to care about the different connections between the steps, but that the workflow engine behind Galaxy is doing it for her. So, thank you very much.
I think we may have established connectivity now with Dr. Dut in Navi Mumbai in India. Dr. Dut, can you hear me? We'll need to reset the slides to Dr. Dut's presentation. Can you hear me in India, in Navi Mumbai? Hello? Dr. Dut?
Yes, I can hear you, and I get the display as well.
Excellent. So we're going to reset the display now to go back to your section of the slides so that you can do your presentation.
Sure. Sure.
We're having competition for the control of the slides.
But the slides are not getting changed.
Patience.
Lights changing.
Yeah, they'll be changing in just a moment. Here we go. Technology triumphs. So I think you can go ahead now, Dr. Dut, and just tell us when you want us to advance the slides.
Sure. So a very good afternoon to everyone. This is Amit Dutt from Tata Memorial Center, Mumbai, and I'm going to give you a brief overview of how ICT BioMed is of utility to my laboratory, and especially for researchers like I, who have had their former or postdoctoral training in large genomic centers like the Broad Institute of Harvard, MIT, and they move back to their home country, and only to realize that now they are not so well connected to the community. So I definitely look forward to using this ICT BioMed to get back onto the community for the scientific and the intellectual, to fill up the scientific and intellectual voidness. So to begin with, this is what I'm on the second slide. This is what the Tata Memorial Center located in Mumbai. We have two arms. A is the Tata Memorial Hospital, which is the largest tertiary cancer care hospital in this region. In fact, to put it in perspective, the patient load at Tata Memorial Hospital is much higher than even the MD Anderson in the US. And the other arm of the Tata Memorial Center happens to be is the basic research arm, that is the ACTRAC, where my laboratory is located. Moving on, this is the third slide. Wanted to start with a very brief introduction of the capacity or the resources that we have already built up over here in the past 4 years of my being a part of the Tata Memorial Center. So now we have a capacity of supporting around 100 terabytes of storage with about 200 processors, with 2 GB machines and 5 12 GB machines. And so we are, in principle, we are satisfactorily placed to proceed for a genome-wide analysis of higher order. But unfortunately, when you place ourselves, when we place ourselves in carrying out the genome analysis, or to make ourselves statistically significant of much higher order, we definitely face a huge constraint, and primarily maybe not because of the resources, but because of the disconnect with the community out there. We definitely need to have some kind of portal where we could access the reference databases or some analytical tools which we are deficient of. So just one slide of what we do over here in my laboratory. This is Cancer Genomics Laboratory, in which we look for next generation therapeutic targets. We are, this is the next slide. So we are looking at the different therapeutic targets. But primarily what we look at is all different kind of somatic alterations that underlies a cancer genome. So to name that there are point mutations, we look at copy number alterations, we look at foreign DNA components in the human cancer genome, and other aspects that may lead to the process of carcinogenesis. And the binding philosophy of my laboratory is that why do we really need to look at these alterations? So, so the underlying philosophy is that we would like to identify those cells which are harboring these alterations, and we would be able to, and the hope is that we would be able to specifically target those cells which are harboring these alterations, and not have a generic treatment which forms the basis of the targeted therapy or personalized therapy. So now looking at all these alterations at a much higher resolution, definitely, I'm moving on to the next slide. I'm moving on to the next slide, where I give an overview of what are the different kind of approaches that we take in our laboratory. We use next generation sequencing platform. We use SNP arrays, different kinds of microarray platforms. And at the same time, so one slide previous. we also, so it's one slide previous, not the surplus plot. We have a strong emphasis in the functional analysis as well in the laboratory. Should we find these underlying genomic alterations, we go back to the cells and we are able to validate them. So that's the approach that what we take. And now talking to the outside world, we are into the clinical settings. We definitely would we want to go back to the clinicians, and we want to present our data in the form that is clinically relevant as well. So this is one of the major constraints that what we face, and we definitely would like to interact more with the community outside, to display our results in more of an integrated manner. What has been shown over here on the slide is a Socus Plus representation where we have copy number alterations at the DNA level, we have expression levels, we have mutations and translocations, what we have found, what we find in, but this definitely has to further improve upon. So, so this laboratory is very strongly believes in collaborative research and to make ourselves truly transformative and to useful. I'm on to the next slide, next to the surplus plot. We definitely want to interact with the outside world, and what is like one of the biggest constraints. So thanks to some initiative, this is the next slide, the National Knowledge Network slide. Thanks to the initiative by the Government of India of taking an initiatives of connecting all the different academic institutes, all the major different academic institutes through the NKN network. We, being at Tata Memorial, we are part of this NKN network, and that allows us also to get connected to the internet at a much higher bandwidth. We are connected to the Europe through the Giant and at 2.5 Gbps, and also to the other countries. However, looking beyond to the outside, we are looking forward to tap onto the ICT BioMed to use something similar and get into the to communicate with the global community out there. So this is what I would like to talk about here from this side, and I pass it on to back onto the floor there.
Thank you, Dr. Dutt. I see that we still have some time here for questions and discussion, and I would like to open it by asking you. I noticed that your former institution, the Broad Institute, recently received an award to explore the use of the cloud, and I'm thinking that that might be something that would fit nicely with the developments that we're working on. Do you still maintain contacts at the Broad Institute that would be perhaps interested in participating in pilots with us?
So yes, maintaining contact and working closely with my former PI and the other researchers at the Broad Institute is central to my laboratory, as that's a great resource that we tap on. Aviv Regev, she would be here sometime in February visiting India. That could be a good time of talking about getting connected to the cloud computing to the Broad as well. I have not in particular initiated of getting connected through the clouds to the Broad as of now, but definitely that's an intent, and with the growing amount of data that we are generating here at ACTRAC, and to mention what I have missed out is that at ACTRAC we are also coming up with a new center of bioinformatics and biocomputational, which is going to be one of the hub places. It's a very big project, going to be the hub place for all the deposition of all the data that is being generated. So that would be possibly one gate to talk abroad.
That's excellent. I'd like to turn now to Sandra Gessing from Notre Dame. And in your presentation, you talked about Galaxy, which of course is very widely used within, well, not just the US, but all over the world. Looking toward the longer run, do you think that that will be adequate to meet the needs of ICT BioMed, or is it possible that other kinds or forms of the science gateways might be necessary?
So I think we will need more science gateways, different ones. So Galaxy is fitting for a lot of things, and next-gen sequencing with the tools, with the visualization Galaxy is able to, but of course science gateways are especially made for the user communities to increase the usability of tools, and I would say that we have to add other science gateways, always fulfilling the demands of different user communities inside the biomedical community, and to provide other user interfaces, maybe with more explanations with different visualizations. So the first user community at the moment, we create the first science gateway for the ICT BioMed infrastructure, starts with Galaxy, but we are open for any further science gateways you want to use, any user community who would be interested, and of course we can create different science gateways for you.
And I really need to take this opportunity, Cesare, to mention the fact that PSNC is not just a HPC center, it's also the manager for the NREN in Poland. And no mention has been made so far really of the network performance monitoring tools that we've been using to help set up ICT BioMed, and I think we'd be remiss not to say something about perfSONAR. Could you make some comments about how important you see perfSONAR in terms of this consortium?
Yes, this is one of our main focus from the very beginning. The experience which we have at PSNC with perfSONAR led us to bring this layer of monitoring of the links to the ICT BioMed experiments and pilots, and even having distributed sites. We can deploy the services for monitoring links between Notre Dame, Poznan, Chalmers in Sweden and India. And we found out, as you may guess, quite interesting outcomes and results from having monitored those links. So it's very important because new questions arises and then we can also have a new light for this interoperability between the centers. The supercomputing, the networking are the main functions we have provided, but also software development itself of the perfSONAR is our specialty. So we are also looking for that contribution to ICT BioMed.
And of course, perfSONAR is just one component really of a science DMZ. Do you see the participants in ICT BioMed also all deploying science DMZs? Do you have one in Poznan?
Yes, this is very important. I think that we have like a little bit of difficulty to take the data coming from Poznan without accessing the global data and global and without federating clouds for data storage. So this is very important. We don't have yet the similar application architecture for that kind of data, because we have that kind of computational models, because we have a very limited number of researchers, I would say, who can get benefits from international collaboration. Like several institutions are now in close collaboration with us, and we build some competence and we build some level of knowledge with them to use the infrastructure in a more advanced way to challenge their barriers and tackle their new problems. So that DMZ is among them as well.
Okay. I'd like to open it up now to questions from the audience. Is there anyone who would like to ask a question?
There is a question.
There's the microphone.
Hi, this question I think is for Sandra probably. You mentioned visualization that may be useful for bioinformatics or life sciences users. Can you elaborate a little more on the kind of visualization that these folks like to do?
So for example, for the people working on docking and molecular structures, they want to be able to see the molecular structures or after the docking process, a new component. And there are some editors and viewers for that out there already. But if you want to integrate them directly also in the workflow and that they can use or get a high quality visualization, they can use also, for example, in their publications, that would be the best for them so that they don't have to create the figures for their publications again in another tool. So we would like to have a science gateway they can use from the beginning with all the experiments up to the publication, always one platform to make life easier for them.
One more question. I think we've just got about a minute left here. I know that the group has decided to try to orchestrate services by using OpenStack as the platform. There has been discussion at this meeting and elsewhere about maybe an evolution from using virtual machines to using containers like Docker. I believe the reason that we settled on OpenStack was that everyone had already installed it, and it's just really been widely adopted. Do you see an evolution in the technologies that we use? And in particular, are we thinking about using Docker?
Yes, I guess I can confirm that this is our future direction. We started with basic Swift container sharing, but we will focus on a further integration or further components. We need a very flexible environment with zones, with regions, with individual control over hosts, so and also integrated environment. That's why we have to look further. By this way, I can take a chance and say that we have some papers published, a printed version of the paper published about our pilot on the CloudNet conference, and anyone who is interested might, I think, Anil, I can ask to take a copy and from us and then read more about our approach.
Okay, well, I think we've run out of time. I'd like to thank our panel and especially our remote presenters in India.